The third row SUV market is a crowded one. Here's your reminder that the non-Hellcat Durango is still a thing that exists. The third row SUV segment is a very competitive segment. The Kia Sorento I tested last year is a fine example of this. Excellent interior materials, the impressive sunroof, and all the tech you could possibly cram in a new crossover. Ford's just come out with a new Explorer. Kia and Hyundai both introduced models above their existing third row crossovers, the Telluride and Palisades. There's a new Toyota Highlander, and Volkswagen's Atlas, Subaru's Ascent, and Honda's Pilot are all good in their own regard. I'm not gonna mention the GM ones. Meanwhile, the Dodge Durango has soldiered on until very recently without a major update. No, before everyone starts screaming, I do know there's a big update for 2021. But this 2019 competes directly with that Sorento that I reviewed last year, so a lot of my thoughts on the Durango reflect that. Don't get me wrong, the 2019 Dodge Durango SXT is perfectly fine. It has Android Auto, all three rows have plenty of room to sit in, and even offers handy storage. The base V6 gives plenty of power, and they'd even offer it with the V8, the last of its kind in this segment. It even has that patented, masculine Dodge look that works well in SUV form. But this is also an old SUV. This feels like an SUV that came out in 2011 in every aspect. Yeah, Uconnect works great, but the tiny 8.4-inch screen is a huge sign that this truck originally came out a decade ago. Unfortunately, being just fine isn't the best way to sell SUVs anymore, as the market is more and more competitive. The Durango was Dodge's first true modern SUV, debuting in 1998 and filling the hole left by the Ramcharger and the Raider. Both of those vehicles were very much enthusiast-directed SUVs, with the Ramcharger being a two-door bobtail aimed directly at the Ford Bronco, and the Raider being a rebadged Mitsubishi Montero. Both models were killed off by declining sales and a shift in the SUV market towards more family-friendly hauling. Like the Ramcharger before it, the Durango was created to directly compete against a Ford, this time being the Explorer. The Explorer is probably one of the most important vehicles sold in America in the 1990s, as its softened lines, decent ride, and off-road capabilities saw families trade in their family wagons for the SUV in droves. It was now cool to drive a midsize SUV, and you didn't have to suffer to live with one, like the first-gen Isuzu Trooper. To compete with the Explorer, Dodge almost got the Jeep Grand Cherokee as its own model, despite all of Jeep's work on that project. However, an in-house design competition between Jeep and Dodge late in the game saw Dodge lose with its La Forza-esque take on the ZJ. It wouldn't be until 1998, when the Durango finally hit the showroom floors, that the company would finally have an Explorer fighter of its own. The first generation, chassis code DN, shared much of its architecture with the mid-sized Dakota pickup truck. In fact, from the front seats forward, it was a Dakota. The parts sharing didn't stop there, as the rear hatch was shared with the Caravan minivans of the time. Despite this, the Durango was a rockin' success for the company, hitting well over 6-digit sales figures for every model year of the first generation. Of course, this meant that a second generation would be greenlit, and the Durango would grow to fit a third row seat. To further differentiate itself from the Durango, it featured style inspired by the 2001 Dodge Power Box concept, a design study that harkened back to Dodge's Power Wagons and Town Wagons of the 1960s. This generation also saw the debut of the 5.7-liter Hemi V8 in the Durango, which would become a staple for the Durango in the segment. I won't lie, this generation of Durango has really weird proportions, almost bloated PT Cruiser-like. Of course, this was the time where Chrysler was chasing nostalgia with pretty much everything in its lineup, and like many of them, this design has not held up over time. There was even a Chrysler version called the Aspen, but that model sold so poorly that it quickly disappeared from showrooms before anyone could notice. Even before the 2008 financial crisis, which tanked sales on many SUVs, sales were taking a downward turn before crashing altogether at the end of the model's life. So here sits the third generation Durango, dubbed WK2, as it sits on the same platform as the Grand Cherokee. Full circle, really, as the original Grand Cherokee almost led to a Dodge model. Unlike that prototype, the third generation throws a lot of Dodge's own muscle car everything style in it. A nose that's definitely most inspired from the Charger sedan, and its own sweeping bodywork that leans towards the back. The Durango has a much bigger presence than the WK2 Grand as well, as it sits an inch taller, 10 inches longer, and has 5 inches more of wheelbase. A lot of this is due to the fact that the Durango is standard with third-row seating, something that the Grand Cherokee has lacked until the very recent reveal of the 5th generation WL Grand Cherokee with its L model. All of this extra girth is useful though, as the third row folds flat in proper fashion, and the third row features enough room for full-size adults like me to sit comfortably. The second row seats are easy to flip up for easy access back there as well. While I'm back here, let's talk about this sticker. This sticker is on the bottom of the second row seats warning where not to put your feet. Notice the SUV that's in the sticker? That SUV is not a Durango. It's a Jeep Commander, last produced in 2010. I wouldn't doubt that these use the same seats between the two vehicles as they're very similar in architecture. The Commander was also a Grand Cherokee-based third-row SUV, but while its styling left a lot of packaging issues for the third row, the Durango fits a lot of those issues by being better packaged overall than the Commander. But one thing I will give the third generation Durango crap for packaging-wise is the front row. Like the smaller Journey, which I'd obviously loathe because I made 2 vehicles on that car, the Durango has this giant center stack and giant dash that crowds the leg area. It's like they spent so much time making sure your kids would be comfortable, they forgot to make the front area comfortable. This is my biggest issue with newer Chrysler products. Yeah, it's only an SXT model, and of course the interior materials are going to be poo, but I'm in a giant SUV and my legs are crowded. The Journey is especially guilty of this as well, and the Challenger has similar issues despite being a giant car. I'm tall and I have knee problems. I don't need my legs cramped over awkwardly in long drives. Ford has this problem too, and this is the primary reason I bought a Malibu over a Fusion. GM has figured out if you're going to put in a big center stack, you at least got to make it small enough so it's not going to cramp your legs. Anyways, like mentioned before, it's just fine on the road. The Pentastar V6 is just a fine engine, and the Hemi V8 is more than enough engine for an SUV like this. And all engines now come standard with a buttery smooth 8-speed automatic. Being a rear-wheel drive based SUV, you can spin the rear wheels if you want to be cool. It shares its 4-wheel drive with mid-level Grand Cherokees, so you have 4-wheel drive if you need it in the snow. Being a V6 model, this is just a 2-wheel drive Durango, and that's all you really need in the South. We don't get snow like they do up north, so you can at least get away with just a 2-wheel drive Durango here. The 2019 Dodge Durango SXT is just fine. It's on the low end of the Durango totem pole, so you don't get the nicer materials and a lot of the comfort options. But it's just fine. 2021 features a major refresh that updates the styling once again, improves everything inside, and even finally puts a Hellcat in the Durango for obvious reasons. But the outgoing models are an aging beast that's not comfortable or refined like its contemporaries. That 2020 Sorento was also an outgoing model, and it's night and day a much more refined vehicle. Base Sorrentos are sold at a comparable price, and the V6 model, like the one I drove, is only just a little bit more expensive than a Durango. Plus, it's a heck of a lot more fuel efficient than the Durango. Now, Chrysler is kind of struggling financially, and you can kind of tell when you compare the 2021 Durango versus a 2022 Grand Cherokee. The Grand Cherokee is going to be a completely new vehicle with a hybrid option and a new third row version and all that. Yet the Durango, for some reason, is carrying on just a minor refresh on the existing model. Yeah, I still gotta sit in the new model, but it's almost like they're just doing the bare minimum to the Durango just to keep selling it to fleets. Yeah, you can now get it in a Hellcat, but that doesn't really sell it nearly as much as the new WL Grand Cherokee. Which is a shame because I want to see the giant snarling Durango do well in the market. The 2019 Dodge Durango SXT is a throwback to big fuel-guzzling SUVs of yore, and not much else. It's fine for what it is, and that's really my only thoughts about it. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. This week's featured car comes courtesy of GingerbreadMan46 on YouTube. He is a full race uploader, and as of recently, he's been uploading a lot of early Grand Am races. So, if sports car racing and NASCAR racing is your fancy, be sure to check out his channel on YouTube. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show, there's a new email dedicated for just submissions now, so check that out on the screen. Like and follow the official Facebook page for channel updates, and follow my Twitter and Instagram for more Wookie rants and shenanigans. Finally, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share with all your friends, and subscribe for more Wookie Drives like these. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good night.
There's more than one of these dilapidated racetracks in America today. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Not when you look at the kind of cars people are making, the kind people are buying. Performance, evidently, is no longer a priority. Cue the sad music. Cue the windswept leaves. Cue the wind-torn, checkered flag. Wait, do you hear that? That sounds like performance returning to the stage. That is a Dodge Durango. Maybe the only SUV that hasn't forgotten that the S stands for sport. And that is the proof that while many may have abandoned the sacred institution of performance, power, handling, agility, and fun, we have not. American performance, consider yourself redeemed.